Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Pete, welcome back, Films and Stuff. We are recording live Saturday morning, somehow between Dubai and London, United Kingdom. It is time for a new segment.
That's absolutely right. We still don't have a segment name, so listeners, this is your chance. Send us an email, aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com, or tweet at us at F&S Podcast. Let us know what you think this segment should be titled. At the moment, we're literally calling it extra credit or homework assignments.
Extra credit. It also needs to be something. Well, maybe we should tell people what we're doing, and then they'll have better ideas for names.
That's probably the smart thing.
So what we have decided to do, executive decision, is we are going to select for each other, myself for Pete, Pete for myself, a list of television shows on any of the streaming platforms, and then randomly choose one of those each week. We're going to watch 2 to 3 episodes and give a book report style of what it's about. And we're doing that to give you all, as our listeners, some suggestions, maybe hidden gems of what to watch or what to avoid. And also for ourselves to get us out of our sci-fi action heavy genre choices and see if we can expand a little bit and find something else that we wouldn't otherwise have chosen, but we find that we're quite passionate about.
Exactly.
So, Pete, I don't know if you got the short straw or the long straw. What show do you have to watch?
I rolled a dice and ended up getting... I ended up having to watch Emily in Paris on Netflix.
I have no idea what this is about. I mean, except from the obvious. Tell me.
All right, so I actually took some notes.
Book report style.
Okay, book report style. So the premise is a very young American woman is transferred to Paris and has to work there while struggling with adapting to the local culture. She's a marketing executive with an expertise in social media. And so you can see that because a lot of the show is stylized around tweets, Instagram, and so forth. You know, you can see like pictures and hearts and all that kind of stuff. And so I watched the first 3 episodes, I think. Maybe
are they 1 hour episodes or 30-minute
30-minute quick sitcoms. I want you to think of this as Netflix's version of Ted Lasso.
Oh.
It's exactly the same premise. A fish out of water, right? An American in Europe, in Ted Lasso's case in England, as a football coach, and Emily in Paris as a marketing executive. And I have to say, on paper, the premise is great, right? Because this is why we love Ted Lasso. It's fine. But I've got to say, I did not enjoy the show at all.
Oh, is there anything funny about it?
It's got, let me go through it, right? So there is some funny things because you get to see the very normal stereotype, which is the unwillingness of an American to adapt to local culture. Then you see, a lot of stereotypical beats, some which are a little funny because they're, some stereotypes are a little funny. But you see, the French don't want to speak English. They're overtly rude. American food is bad for you. The French smoke indoors and everywhere they can. Americans are fat and ignorant. There's that sassy black guy who works at the office. You get the new friend from China/Korea, but who somehow has a very strong American accent. You have the French are super casual when it comes to relationships and with sex and affairs. Paris doesn't look anything like the real Paris. It looks like a small village in the middle of the country, like super romanticized, very quiet, pretty and clean. All of this is just, it's so, like individually, they're fine, but as a unit, it's actually quite an offensive depiction of France. And it's entirely inaccurate, right? I mean, Paris is a huge city. You don't you don't go for a morning run through a huge city and not run into at least 1,000 people. Yet she's running along the River Seine, the main city, the main river, and she's runs into what? 3 people on her run in the middle of the morning? It's just filled with cliches, and it's, I think the target audience is also like the younger
May not be you.
female, and it's definitely not me. It's definitely not for me. I can see that appeal because there's a lot of high fashion, social media, and some kind of potentially elements of strong female empowerment, but I'm not going with it, right? Because if I have to choose between Ted Lasso and Emily in Paris, I'm going with Ted. There's really, every episode, and definitely by the end of it, there felt like there was heart behind every encounter. Like even with the bad guy, Jamie, the antagonist, you see the reasons why, and you get to learn to love him, and you learn, and Ted wins everyone over. I'm not getting that with Emily, and I don't want to. I just don't feel that pull for it. And so that's the show as in a nutshell. And just as an aside, there's also been a lot of controversy associated with the show.
Oh, really?
And it's the reason I didn't want to bother with it when I first found out about it. They allegedly bribed members of the Hollywood Foreign Press to get Golden Globes nominations. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, they took people out.
I love drama.
They took 30 plus members of the association on an all-expense-paid trip to Paris, put them up in hotel rooms that were like 3,000 euros a night, in suites, paid for Michelin-star dinners every night, the rides everywhere, everything. And then on top of that, in the second season, they were introducing very negative stereotypes about how Ukrainians are thieves and pickpockets. Ooh. And especially today, that's all the more okay, do you need to do that? They're already a little down on their luck. So it was just a lot of controversy around the show. Wow. And not in a good way. And I'd heard of this controversy before I even watched the show. So I was already down on the show. And then I watched it and I was like, oh, I kind of get it. So it is by and far, in my opinion, a skip.
Sounds like a skip.
But I fully say, look, I am not the target demographic.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we have tried, but we've had failure on that.
Of course, but that's what this is for. That's precisely what this is for us to broaden our horizons and see what other shows that we can watch in the week, right?
Yeah. All right, my turn. I have been chosen, or I've selected something called Shadow and Bone on Netflix. I have never heard of this at all. And my show is a little bit more nuanced. It is kind of a fantastical drama. Mm-hmm. I guess what that means is it has magic elements and stuff like that.
Like Game of Thrones, or
like Game of Thrones, Game of Thrones-ish.
Okay.
So I watched one episode and I was totally confused and perplexed. And then after doing a little bit of more research before I watched the second and third episodes, I understand that this is based on a book or a series of books.
Okay.
Which is a fantasy adventure series. And it's actually quite popular. And then it was made into a series by Netflix. So let me tell you what I understood watching the first episode, which I think we've both talked about before. First episodes are so critical that if you don't capture your audience in that one, you've lost them right away.
You've set yourself up for failure.
It's really important to present something interesting, explain things. People shouldn't walk away. I absolutely walked away from the first episode saying, I just don't want anything to do with it. Doesn't make any sense. And it wasn't really compelling. All right. So what I understood is that there are 2 places. That's all I know, is that there's 2 places And they're separated by something they call the fold. F-O-L-D, the fold. And the fold is a big black fog or cloud. And it's kind of like a sea where they have these like old pirate ships, except they don't float. There's no water. It's just a sand sea, for example. And they have kind of like the rails like you'd see on like a sled or skis or something. And they then ski through the fold, through this black fog. And once they get inside, there's like all these, they're not vampires, but they're kind of like these flying dragon type thingies that eat people and kill people and such. And sometimes these ships make it through the fold to the other side, and sometimes they lose all their crew. So the only way that they can kind of get like goods, whether it's like food and supplies and things, is that people have to make these runs through the fold. And it's very dangerous. They get paid well, but it's kind of like a suicide mission. You know, maybe you make it once, but you're probably not going to make it like, you know, twice or three times. You know, it's like kind of 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5 or something like this. So this girl has who obviously is kind of the main character. Her name is Alina. She has like this platonic, like childhood male friend, and he is like a soldier, and he gets drafted to provide security on one of these supply runs. And she has this bad feeling that he's going to go by himself, and she doesn't want him to die. They're best friends. They grew up together. So she somehow manipulates herself to get assigned to the ship as a map maker. And they go across and they get attacked by all these things. And as they're starting to attack her friend, she emits this big light. And this light scares off all the flying dragony things. And that's something that no one's ever seen. They make it to the other side. Everyone talks about what she does. And of course, she is the one. And the chosen one is called the Sun Summoner. And that's kind of how the first episode ended, as far as I remember. And I was like, all right.
I mean,
like that's
on paper, it sounds great, but this seems like every other kind of fantasy trope in there.
That's exactly what I felt, which is, okay, like, I think I've seen like everything I need to see. There's nothing else. So then I went and I read a little bit about it, and I put in like a lot of these names and some of the details, and I understand that it was a country, and the country long ago was somehow divided by this fold. They're not entirely sure. One side of the country believes that it's still kind of like the capital and it's ruling. The other side says, hey, we're separated now. Like, we're not going to take instructions from you. We can't even see you. It's hard to get there. You know, so like, we're just going to like be independent. We're going to govern ourselves. So I feel like this is also going to get into one of these other kind of political situations where, like, you know, the ruling area does not have natural resources, but the area that is being ruled has the natural resources. You can see where that's going. And then there's also, in addition, the adventure element is that there's also, I guess it's only ladies that are called Grisha, Grisha, and they have like small magical abilities, like not as much as the chosen one, but they can kind of like create wind, they can create fire, like little things like this. Not little things, but like they're not like Avengers or something, you know, they're not like superheroes, but they've got like some small magical powers. So after this, I decided I would watch 2 more episodes, and I'm going to rate this as a skip for a few reasons I'll get to. But basically, it played out as I kind of expected, which is the chosen one is now kind of wanted by both sides. You know, the ruling class obviously is grooming her and being very nice to her and believes that, she's the one that can, help to get rid of this fold or help unite the country. And obviously the other side claims her for their own, saying, look, you're actually from this place originally. You belong to us, culturally. You can help us and defend us and so on and so forth. And of course, it's just kind of like this going to be ongoing good versus evil. Who can she trust? Who can she not trust? And I have to say, there's some interesting elements about it. But overall, I just felt like I was not learning anything new. The idea of the divided country I thought was interesting. The idea of the fold was interesting. I didn't like the flying dragons, which I thought was just kind of like one of these things that I've seen in Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, so many other kind of fantastical movies. It wasn't so interesting to me. The lead actress I thought was actually quite decent. Jessie Lee. I thought that the dude who is her child friend was nothing special at all. And I have to say, I have one of these, it's just kind of boring to me where there are these, maybe it's based on Dawson's Creek, but when you've got kind of the boy and girl, young adult, best friends, clearly they're somehow in love with each other, but they're just not old enough to realize it yet. It's just currently a platonic friendship, but it seems like it's eventually their soulmates or something. I just thought this was kind of it was just something like a trope that we've seen before. So overall, I do give this a pass. For those reasons, it's not without some merit. I can see why some people, may be interested in it, but for me, it's not enough to hold my attention. It calls itself an action adventure drama. Maybe that's kind of true, but none of it really captivated me actually. So it's a pass.
Okay, and this is available where?
This is on Netflix.
On Netflix. Okay.
Yep. So I think we need to do this again for next week. We can do our random drawings offline, but let's do the same thing for next week. Let's come back with 2 more shows, one for you, one for me.
Absolutely.
Let's see if we can find something a little bit more compelling.
Absolutely. So there you have it, guys. Our first ever homework or extra credit assignment episode where we watch Shadow and Bone on Netflix and Emily in Paris on Netflix. Unfortunately, both were skips for both of us. For various reasons. Mine certainly more of a demographic, and I think from what I'm hearing on Ethan's side, for Shadow and Bone seems to be a played-out, cliched, fantasy-esque show, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. If they're interesting to you, by all means, please watch. Tell us whether we should try to go into it again or not, but as it stands, we're going to move on to the next show.
We'll dip into the well again, and we'll come back with, at the very least, 2 more shows that you should avoid.
Or, if we're lucky, 2 shows that you should immediately subscribe and watch.
Yeah. Quit your job, watch these shows. Okay. Sounds great. Pete, as always.
It's a pleasure.
We see you guys next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.